Hey guys, welcome to Finally Clicked, the podcast where we discuss business, leadership, and personal development. My name is Margaret Smith, and I'm the Director of Operations for Pickett Street Properties, a real estate team out of Bothell, Washington. And I'll be here every week with our owner and team leader, Jesse D. Moore. We'll be digging into concepts and ideas that have helped us both personally and professionally. And you'll also get a chance to hear from local and national experts that we know provide massive value to get to the point where it all finally clicks. It's a beautiful sunny day in Seattle here at the Finally Clicked Studios with Jesse D. Moore and Margaret Smith.
We wouldn't know because we're in a windowless studio.
But we just
It
came
could have turned.
from a place
The
with
weather
light.
could have turned while in the short time we've been in here.
That's true. It does do that in Seattle. It's
It
kind
could
of like
be
PMS.
raining cats and dogs like it is in Southern California, where our guest for today's podcast
Yeah, he
hails.
was definitely jelly of where we're at right now. P.S. By the way, can I just say that I got feedback from just two people, but two people said that we did not banter enough on our last episode.
Oh, not enough banter.
They missed the banter.
Well, we were talking to Enmei. We had a guest. I feel like you have to be. I'm like on high alert when Enmei is in studio.
Because you're not sure what she's going to say.
I don't, and I'm like,
She's analyzing every moment,
do I have
every
a spirit,
glance, every
looking at her
right
over
there.
my shoulder?
Actually, that's a really good point. I've
Is
had to like let go of that stuff because same thing. I'm wondering like, what is she thinking? Is she reading my? Oh my God, she's reading my thoughts right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, sorry for the banterless episode.
I
We
mean,
were holding on to
we've got a lot today.
her jewels.
Both of us are rather sassy today, so.
Are we?
Yeah,
I don't know
I'm
what you're
feeling
talking
it.
about. I've been busy working. I'm too busy to be
You were
sassy.
quick-witted today, though. I mean, not that you aren't every day, but today was especially witty day.
I had you know what? I found out, isn't it funny when we talked to Tim,
Yeah.
who is our guest today, assistant to Gary John Bishop, who we obviously love
and adore.
on this show. In the podcast with him, as we interviewed him, I do have this like overwhelming need to like make analogies, right?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, like it's just
Amen that you've just had this awareness right now.
Well, it is kind of quirky.
It's kind of your thing. It's your thing.
Is quirky.
But you're helping people to translate and make sense of what you're thinking, and it's a great way to do it, and you do it well. I don't mind it. I don't find it annoying because I think it's funny, and I think the pictures you bring up into my mind, it's like a little movie I'm watching. And you're usually a character in it, whether you mean to be or not, but I find it quite funny. Like I could see it as a cartoon.
What was my character in this last movie that I just painted for you?
With the talk with Tim?
Uh-huh.
I'm trying to remember which analogy it was.
The
'cause
bike.
I thought you were going to say riding it like a horse.
I want to ride my bicycle.
I mean, yeah, I pictured you on one of those high, low rider with the high,
Oh, with
high handles.
those are called
Yeah, and for some reason you
ape
had
hangers.
Okay, ape hangers.
Oh, you're supposed to be like gorilla.
And you had a helmet on, which I don't know why, because you would probably never wear a helmet, but that's what I pictured.
So nice. Now, as I know that when I do a podcast and I share an analogy, that you
I am dreaming
cover
it up
my
in my head.
face. You cover my face,
Just your head, not your face.
right? And put me on a low rider.
Yeah. When you told the
BMX.
story about riding along when you were younger, I absolutely pictured it in my head.
What?
Riding along on the horse and the pastures and the countryside of your
I've
by your
never.
ranch.
What are you talking about?
You told the story about you said you were going to write a story about a kid riding on his horse through the ranch and the things he thought up along the way. That
Oh,
yeah.
right.
Hello, you still need to write that book.
Well,
Yeah, I'm a very visual person, so if you don't tell me the story or don't tell me what it looks like, I make it up in my head.
I loved our chat with
Our
Tim.
little chat, it was good.
We brought everything around full circle. Little Gary John Bishop sprinkled
Gary
with
John
a little
Bishop.
Tyler from Gary Vaynerchuk's team, sprinkled with a little bit of Mo, a little bit of Jesse, and it was a ratatouille
A rat
dish.
ratatouille.
called this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
So let's jump in. Tim is in Southern California.
Yes.
And he's here to talk to us about his businesses and all things administrative that we've been that's how we got to know you, right? We got to know you as we tried to set up this event for the Pacific Northwest Admin Retreat. And Margaret got to know you, and so Margaret, did you find him on the inside of a book flap? How did you
No, I did what I do every time when I'm looking for a speaker. Is so many people are surprised by how I did it, but I just go to his website and I inquired. And then Tim was the one. Tim's like the gatekeeper, and because I did not balk, he said at the price, he was like willing to speak to me. So then I remember we Skyped for the first time, and I was like, we like super easy conversation. And so I was intrigued by who are these people that do things like this for authors and speakers and stuff. And so when we looked up your website, Jesse, you were actually the one that was like, let's look them up. And then we found all these different things that you do. And we heard a little bit about your story, and we immediately wanted to know more. And so, I'm excited.
Well, I think I was really intrigued by your model because we're so used to people having an assistant, right? And then here you are kind of like a work share administrator for many people.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
So along with a graphic designer, a photographer, a counselor, which by the way is like
guide.
All kind of things that I love doing too. I have my photography business for about 6 years, and then I have my master's in social work. So I'm like, this is so interesting. Yeah.
So
and I will have to say I can't take credit 100% because I actually contract through a business that that paired Gary and I together.
Okay.
But I was one of their first and have been doing it for over 2 years now, and have really we've created this massive model that's different than a traditional VA. And that's something that we've been finding. One of the biggest pieces, and I know this is, we're all Americans. When you call us, when you work with us, you get people who have been in business in the US for years. And while VAs in the Philippines are highly valuable, I've worked with multiple companies that use them, and they're awesome if you need to do a lot of administrative basic work. But what's different about, say, someone like me or people at our company, our job is not to sit here and just do your calendar. Gary counts on me, not as a gatekeeper, but I'm thinking like Gary.
Yeah.
He's an author, but I'm also a coach on the side. So I get when he wants his time with his kids, I'm the same way about my child. And so when someone asks, I don't think like Gary. I think like a dad for my client, because I'm like, I care about Gary and he's a badass. So I'm going to keep his schedule pristine. That's kind of how, and you just don't get that with a Filipino VA. They have no idea what that world is.
You're only the second person I've heard it explain it that way. The first is Margaret. Margaret, as she teaches other admin, how to be exceptional at their job. One of the things that she talks about is how her primary focus early on was figuring out how I think and why I think that way, so that she could incorporate that into her work style.
That is my first conversation with every client I have in this capacity. I said, I don't care what your workload is. I'll learn anything you give me. What I'm interested in is knowing how you think, because that is what will have me actually take something from you, which is what our job is. And that's why it's hard to quantify, I think, what our role is, because we're doing all of our work involves removing things. So it's not like we can say, hey, I removed that. You can't prove it.
I like that.
You know what I'm saying? That is our job. Is that, if she's supporting you, Jesse, she's taking noise out of your life. I'm taking noise out of Gary's life. Not that he didn't want to talk with Margaret. He doesn't want to talk with Margaret. He doesn't want to talk with 10 assistants.
Yeah.
He wants someone else to do that. I'm removing noise from his life so that he can be who he is best at, which is Bishop.
I introduced him at the retreat, by the way. I talked about you briefly and about how good our conversation was, and he was like, okay, come on, Margaret, move on. Like it was so funny.
Right. And it's not, and I don't take it personal. That's the other piece. You have to get what they're doing.
He obviously likes you. Obviously do a good job for him.
I'm trying to imagine Gary John Bishop like talking to 10 admin a day. Where he's like,
you would not do it.
Well, it's up to you, isn't
it? Exactly. And that's why I'm here. And that's why he doesn't have to pay me. I'm not full time. I deal with the high end. I call it high end shit work. Yeah. For lack of a better term. And it's not shit work for me. It's shit work for him, because he is doing something I can't do. I can't write his books. But he can sit and write for however long, and I take care of every other aspect of his life that is just him moving and him living his life in an easy and smooth way. That's what I like to say. I don't say it's slow. I say it's smooth. Because if it's slow, it means things are just going along nice and well. But every time in my experience in work, anytime I use the word slow, it's like something pops up that makes it not slow. But smooth is you're not fighting anything when things are smooth. Slow is like an indictment for not being fast.
Margaret, I think he's saying words have meaning.
Oh my gosh. Seriously.
That's one of my sayings. Sorry, I'm a nerd. Did you do? It's, you know what? I think it's so interesting to me when I found out that, you know, your model and how Gary John Bishop utilizes it. I guess for me, it's so natural. Like Margaret and I work in close proximity to one another.
Yes.
And we actually talked about it. She wants to move to an office that's a little bit further away. And I'm like, I don't know if I like that. But did you ever, it's so bizarre to me that this could be done virtually, but you're obviously making it work.
Well, I will say this. Gary is my longest client in this capacity. He also has a unique ability of being very straight, which is something I do too. So there's never any BS between us. It doesn't happen. And that's unique. We almost never, I've never video called with him either. I've never actually seen him face to face. It's just not something we do. We talk on the phone. Sometimes it's 5 minutes and he'll give me 10 things. And on occasion we'll sit and he just wants to share with me. He'll sit on the phone for 45 minutes and he's sharing with me about the process of what he's doing, because what he's giving me is his thoughts. Right. He's saying, oh, I was in this situation and, you know, I've done this and I thought about that. And he's just giving me his life.
Yeah.
And he doesn't do that all the time, but every once in a while, and I put it in my bank. I'm like, okay, cool. That's how you thought in this situation. Got it. Okay, cool. And then in the future, I'm able to recall that. But because there's nothing there, it's easy to recall. Yeah. And we don't skimp on anything. There's a real strong relationship of having integrity between the two of us. And we call it like it is. If, you know, I think in the beginning I was so nervous working for him, I'd sweat every time I got on the phone with him, swear. Yeah. And it was something I had to acknowledge. And what it was it was so important to me. I was over sensationalizing the experience in my head. So that's something I did have to work through being virtual. I think that would have it would have gone over a lot sooner had I been face to face, had I had the relationship that you and Margaret have. I don't know I would have dealt with that particular piece, because you're dealing with everything you don't see.
Yeah.
You're on the phone with a guy, and most of my calls in the beginning were 10 minutes tops, mostly shorter.
Yeah.
And then I wouldn't talk to him for 2 weeks. So you have to deal in the beginning with what you're not getting.
We don't get. I remember you explained to me too, you made a mistake once on his calendar.
Yes.
And that was a lesson that he basically was like, if this happens again, we're done.
Yes.
Was that early on?
It was midway through.
Okay.
I was actually integrating new clients in, and I hadn't set up a structure for managing an existing client whilst onboarding a new one, and I let some lines get crossed. And since then, I actually have a beautiful structure for it, and I don't deter from it, and it hasn't. I onboarded a brand new client January of this year, probably the biggest client I ever did, and Gary didn't feel it, didn't even notice it happened, because I time blocked my experience. So if I was working on Gary's stuff, that was sacred time, and I don't work on anything else. And then he knew my cutoff was here, so he never felt any different.
Okay.
He would never, and that was the beauty of it, is I really get to dance in my own time. That's the piece I love.
I have to imagine, do your clients, we understand the benefit of time blocking. We preach it all the time.
Yes.
When you're kind of in a situation where you're sharing do your clients ever feel like they're
not getting enough?
Yeah, they're not getting enough, or they need more of you, or they need access to you more often?
Not as of late. Gary contracts me for about 15 hours a week, and my second client, he's actually in Portland. That's a different situation. I'll explain that later, but he contracts me for 20 hours a week as like an operational VP. But then I also do some outside web design work for him. I've designed like 4 websites for him, in the slew and kind of intertwining of all of that. I would say that if either of them were to ask for a whole lot more of what they're both currently contracting me for, that would be a little bit too much. But as of right now, they both seem very happy with the amount of time I'm committing to them. And what it's morphed into is a lot like a presence. So I can't sit and like I do time blocking, but a lot of what I give people is the attention. It's like people know, like Margaret knows if she's going to email me for Gary, she will get a response from me. And that's the ethos I've created with everybody who works with me. They may not get it right here, but you will get something and you will get the answer that you want. And that has become far more valuable than anything else in this business.
So I think that's why we got along so well, is because you knew you were going to get an email back from me. And you knew I was going to do what I said I would do. We were like magic.
There's one other gentleman who I've worked with in the 2 years who occurs like you. His name's Sam, and
I'm still better, right? I'm still better.
Well, I never met Sam, so you're 10 times better. I've never even seen him, but it was like you two have stuck out because you guys have so much integrity around your responses, and it creates an experience.
It does.
And I've found that experience is more valuable to executives than anything else.
I think that you just summed up probably what's one of like the biggest characteristics in an A+ person in that kind of a role, whether it be an assistant role or an operations or just like management role or just in that kind of level of leadership, is the integrity of your presence.
Yes.
How you make the experience happen.
That's right. Anyone can walk in the room with me and I will make them feel that same way because I'm not intimidated by who they are. I may be curious in the beginning and it may come off earnest, but that's me learning you. The moment that I'm comfortable around that, there's a whole nother ball of wax that it takes on.
And that's not just because you look like an MMA fighter.
I have. Thank you for that. That's actually my younger brother, not me. I have been in one fight in my entire life, and I walked away from it. He punched me, and I walked away. I never threw one. But yes, thank you. It's awesome.
All right, so how'd you get started doing this?
I went through a really gnarly divorce.
Oh, most divorces are not. I describe divorce as brutal. Like it's the most brutal experience I've ever been through.
It was, and to top it off, it was divorce, home loss, job loss, family dissipated within a matter of about 2.5 months, which is kind of where the wanting to commit suicide came in. I had to be, what was one of the things that really, it kind of jarred me was I actually had to have the cops call and a psychiatrist came to my house and evaluated me. I had to be carted off on a gurney. This was in 2012. It was in a very dark place. You know, you talk about having a son. My son walked in the room and he was like 2 or 3. And I talk about it now and I have the emotion about it. But at the time, I felt absolutely nothing towards him. It was like everything inside me was this black experience. And my dad, bless his heart, he at the time told me it was going to be the most powerful time of my life, but it was just the worst time to tell me that. And now I would say he was right. At the time, I needed something different. But that's partially what sparked this, was when I was driving in the ambulance, I'm sitting there and I'm all strapped in and the med tech's talking to me and he's like, "You look fine." And I'm like, I kind of feel, I mean, at this point, I'm just kind of like, I'm in there and I'm watching all the cars kind of go by on the highway as I'm driving to the hospital. And every single person in every car that I see looks worse than me. Every single face looks like they're just having a horrible day. And I'm like, what? I literally was like, what the fuck is my problem? It was kind of like what popped into my head out of nowhere. And I remember going to the medical hospital and seeing every other mental patient who was there. And I related to none of them. Like I didn't feel mentally downtrodden, but for some odd reason, that's how I was relating to myself for this period of time. And then all of a sudden I got around people who actually were. And I felt different. And it was in that moment, something was born. And it started with, I wanted to do something around relationships, specifically families who had that kind of thing happen. I've always been the guy to in retail, I've worked a lot of retail jobs. Anytime there's a bad customer, I was the guy that went for it. So I have no problem going into a sticky situation. In fact, I kind of like, give me the stick crap, whatever that is. I want to know what it is because I didn't want people to go through that. And I will say, fast forward, that relationship is totally transformed. I have a great relationship with my ex-wife, the guy she now is married to, that got involved in that process. I'm remarried. And as far as divorces go, I couldn't ask for anything better. So I will say that got transformed. And that's kind of been my claim to why I do this, because I want people to see what it can look like. And that's where it started with relationships. And then I got involved with a company that did a lot of transformational work. That's actually where I met Gary in the very beginning. And I got
stop you before you go on to that.
Sure, yeah.
So in regards, I'm just curious, in regards to your divorce and how you responded to it, would you say that was just plan A going wrong, and that's how you responded to it? You know what I mean? Where
no, absolutely. Well, actually, what I will say is I'll fast forward to why I got married. It was plan 0 that turned into plan A that I didn't want to turn into plan A. And the divorce was the breaking point. So when we were together, we were still dating, we were involved, and we were living together. And I could tell that the relationship was going in places I didn't want it to, but I was dependent on her financially for the home. She was older than me. She made more than me. I had lost some work. And so I let some of those factors play into it. And then lo and behold, she got pregnant, and I wasn't going to leave at that point. So I chose to stick. And I would say that majority of that marriage was really tumultuous and very argumentative. And we were on different pages. She would make fun of me for my spiritual beliefs. Like you could tell that on a foundational level, we weren't on the same page. And that just led to problems in our parenting. And it led ultimately to the marriage not working, to where the point where we would encounter problems. And that's what had us break in 2011, 2012. There was a financial decision I made that was really stupid, but I thought it was a good one. And she flew off the handle, and it threw a bomb into it, and we couldn't handle it. We didn't deal with it. And that's partially what I talk to people about. And especially in the beginning of a relationship is, how do you really handle foundational aspects that allow you to handle those tough things? That was one of the most profound lessons I learned, was never compromise your values, no matter how much someone wants you to. As I felt it in the beginning, I could sense it, but I rejected whatever that was for the sake of my safety. And I think ultimately, while I love my son and would never trade it, I don't know if I would make those same choices in that same way.
I understand that 100%.
Does that answer your question?
Well, kind of. So let me ask it a different way. So as considering how you responded to it overall,
yes,
like I think a lot of people would assume, that it was your hopes and dreams crashing to the earth, and that's why you responded that way.
Yes.
In listening to your answer, that's not what happened. It seems like it was more a conspiracy of small concessions over time, right? So what were you mourning, do you think, in that, as you reacted to it that way? If you know that it wasn't right on a bunch of different levels.
Absolutely. I was mourning my future, or what I thought got robbed from me. So she's almost 12 years older than me. And right after we got together, she experienced a pretty bad back injury, which led to us having to see a chiropractor like 3 times a week. And it would take 4 or 5 hours of our day from where we were to where we had to go. And I felt, however bad it was in that moment, I was 21, 22, 23. I wanted to live my life. And here I am taking care of an invalid and then on top of that, right after that happened, we had our son. So, and I was a stay-at-home dad. So I'm a stay-at-home dad taking care of this woman who has a horrible back, and I'm 25 years old in Southern California, and I can't have any of my life to myself. And to top it all off, when I tried to go get a job after my son had grown up a little bit, she stopped me from doing it. So I felt like so much of my life had been robbed from me. Whether or not that was true, that was how I felt in the moment. And so I think we were just waiting for something to cause a breaking point. I think both of us were looking for an out, and that was just happened to be it. So
it's interesting to me. So when you go through the process of divorce, and because I've done this as well, and I relate to you at a pretty high level around this. It's funny because I was miserable, and you would have thought separation or divorce would have been a celebration. It just wasn't. And I agree. I totally know what you mean by you were celebrating the loss of your future. Yes. Like so much time and energy and planning and everything is geared towards being with that person, right, and building on that momentum. And here I am having to start all over again, essentially.
Yes.
It's a depressing, dark place to kind of build off of, right? Like,
well, and I think what had me see the relationship as I also felt like I was abandoned by most of my friends, and a lot of them actually admitted it several years later that they did abandon me. And so I felt abandoned everywhere. And I grew up overseas, so none of my family was around. My dad lives in Thailand. That's where I grew up. My mom was living like 8 hours north, and I lived on my uncle's air mattress in his living room. And he's a very dogmatic fundamentalist. And so that was like
that's
people that, I mean, I was a missionary in Thailand. That was like what I originally did. And I've definitely shifted views since then. But that was kind of the family I had around. And what I now know, I feel like I needed, and people in that state need, is really someone they feel like they can have a mirror with. And I felt no mirror with anybody. No one was willing to even for a second get on my page. And then every time I talk about it, everyone was trying. My family didn't want to upset my ex-wife, so they did things that made it seem like they were siding with her. And it just felt everybody was not siding with me. And I'm like, I literally was just like, I didn't want to be here. I didn't know how. But I will say I did. I'm so sorry. I keep getting a bunch of. I thought I turned that part off. Anyways, so it was a powerful time for me. But it was I struggled a lot during that time. I grew up a lot too, though, I will say.
All right. So from that, you get treatment, you get some help, and
Yep.
then you're about to go into how you got hooked up with this company.
Right. So, I actually started working at Costco right after that, and I worked in the parking lot for like 3 months. That was awesome. Because it just gave me a physical outlet. Like I just pulled carts around and worked on my abs in the sun. Like that was what I got to do. That was pretty cool. But I started working at a training development company, and when I started working there, I finally got some mirrors. I finally got some people who were willing to put themselves in my shoes. And one of my first guys who I started working with, he actually went through a divorce, and he was the first person to suggest that resentment didn't need to be my first response.
Mm-hmm.
And I was blown away at what that could do. Specifically for my son, it shifted from my anger towards my wife, towards my love for my son and the life I wanted him to live. And who I became from that was a lion, a person who wasn't willing to not fight, but show people love all at the same time. And so my wife left me for somebody in this process, and it was really devastating. And I was the first person to apologize to him for my behavior during the divorce, because I was pretty nasty at some points. And it caused him to apologize to me for the first time. And I saw the power of letting that go for the sake of the relationship I wanted to build. And now my son doesn't. I asked him the other day, I said, who would you want to live with? He's like, I can't answer that. Mom and Josh give me this. You and Jacqueline give me this. And I love my life. And I'm like, that's what I want people to see.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I have to ask you about what you were talking about with the mirror thing, because you went on to explain it a little bit.
Probably. Yeah.
When you're going through your divorce, you didn't have any friends or family that would actually be honest with you back about what they thought you were going through? Or did you mean like a mirror as in like you couldn't toss things off of them? Like it sounds like that guy was the first person to be honest with you.
Can I ask you a different question in answering that?
Yeah, go.
So, I see it as you feel there's a degree of loneliness that happens where you don't see symmetry in anything around you, right?
Yes.
Where you look around and you don't find people that see the world the same way that you do, or situations the same way that you do, and it's a very isolating feeling.
Yes.
Is that what you mean?
100%. I do recognize, and I've so thankful that I've gotten some space from this, because I've had other people get to witness it. My ex-wife, bless her soul, she's a wonderful mother. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some stuff there mentally going on. I really do believe that I don't want to use the word crazy, but I felt insane. Because there was one specific instance where the guy that she was with was in the house, and I had the sense that something was going on. And I confronted them both about it, and they both were like, how dare you confront me? And literally the next day I went through her phone and found like they had been messing around for 3 weeks. So I was made to feel like my intuition was completely off, when I knew the whole time it wasn't, but my environment told me I was. So I felt completely disjointed from anybody in my environment, because I felt lied to. And I felt like everybody who I would turn to was calling me crazy. Like my dad would get on the phone. Oh, you're fine. It's the best thing in your life. I get a friend on my thing. Like, Tim, this isn't who you are. I love you. No one just got that was who I was in the moment. And that was the darkest moment of my life. And I didn't need someone to tell me there was light at the end of the tunnel. I needed someone to wade into the darkness with me and just say, it's cool. And that's what I do now. I literally spent, fast forward 4 or 5 years, some of my best friends went through a horrible divorce 2 years ago. I lived in their house with them for 3 months at the worst points, right in it with them. Yeah. I made sure they didn't argue in front of their kids. And a year and a half later, they're back together.
Wow.
I called every single moment of it with them. I mean, that was like, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I would not have been able to do that because I didn't care about how scary it got for them. It didn't matter to me because I had faced something immeasurably greater than any of the darkness they were going to come up with. So that's what I mean by the mirror thing. That's what it just, and I appreciate, Jesse, the way you worded that. That was really excellent.
Have you always been like this? Like, I know that experience obviously changed you to such a degree, but you've got to have this in you naturally too, because to be able to walk with someone through something like this, it takes a certain kind of person, empathy, like.
It's a good question. I've always been a social butterfly, very, very positive, sort of annoying. That was kind of how I grew up. But I did discover something recently from my dad that may or may not point to anything here, but he said that ever since I was a child, I always had a way of hurting. It started with animals. We had a ton of animals when we grew up. We had when I was 6 and 7, we had 9 snakes, 8 Rottweilers, 3 dachshunds, 20 quail, and 30 fish. We had a ton of animals at our house, and I took care of them all. And I thought that was just what you did. But apparently Dad said that was just something I naturally always did. Like I always could corral, and the animals always just listened to me. Whereas he would say, your younger brother, he could kind of get it if I told him once or twice. Your older brother, I'd tell him 500 times. He had no idea what I was talking about. You, I never had to tell, is what he told me. And that translated later when I became a TA and a camp teacher. I taught hundreds of kids in Thailand, and I'd manage groups of 300 to 500 and have no issue at 16. Now, while I don't know if it's the same area, I've always had a way with people and being in the position to take care of things. And it may have now morphed into my pain being translated into understanding how that works with others. Mm-hmm. That's the only indicator I have. But I've not traditionally been someone to go after pain and people's darkness like this. No. That's been in the last 6 to 7 years.
Well, I think it's very admirable that you can talk about your pain, including suicide, which needs to be talked about. And so I think that's very admirable. You can do that.
We had Tyler, who is Gary Vaynerchuk's assistant, on.
Yeah.
And what he kind of says that I think you're echoing to some degree is the role hospitality plays in an administrative job, where really. Like there's so much fuss made about titles when it comes to being an assistant, right? Yes. That it's somehow lesser than or whatever. And he's like, no. Like, take that off. Instead, think of it as hospitality. Like, I'm here to deliver a great product for my client. And so when you talk about taking care of animals at a young age or staying with people you care about to make sure that they make it through a difficult situation, that's hospitality, right? And you're doing the same thing for Gary John Bishop and your other clients.
Yeah, it sounds like you probably naturally to be around you is you're a healer of some sorts too, which is the same thing people say about me. It's a very calming, mellow, like, and being able to have that perspective of when you were looking outside the ambulance and seeing the people drive by looking like they're hating their lives, and you're like, well, my life isn't that bad. That's that perspective is life-saving. It totally is. Yeah, people can feel
literally,
that.
literally does for me.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I guess that's, I like to see people taken care of. I think so few people don't. Like I remember when I was working at that company where I met Gary, there was a building company, like a building management company we were working with. And I remember interfacing with an assistant, and I would just write my letters, thank you, at the end of them. Her name was Autumn. And I said, thank you, Autumn. I appreciate this so much. I met her boss 4 years later after he left the company. We were just talking. He's like, do you want to know something? Every time Autumn would get an email from you, she would come dancing into my room saying, I got a letter from Tim. And I'm like, why? She's like, because you said thank you every time.
So powerful. Yeah.
I'm like, what is that? And that's when I started to recognize that what I offer, because it's hard, it's been really hard for me to define what I offer. You know, I hate that phrase, the jack of all trades, master of none, because it makes me feel less than. But I am good at a lot of things. But I think what I am a master at is whoever I'm in front of. If you're in front of me, I am so focused on what I can do to take care of you, especially like my wife. I call her when she's coming home from work. I'm like, what do you need? You want a bath? You want some coffee? You want some tea? You want a drink? You know? And it's like, I love it. And that's how it is with Gary. Like, he has grown into something not quite family, but not quite client either for me. In that when I get a text from him, there's a work response, but there's a visceral, like, emotional response of, no, I want to take care of this man. And he knows it. And he respects it.
I think it's interesting to hear that repeated. We've heard that time and time again since Tyler introduced it, that hospitality is really, and that bridges the gap between friends and client, right? Like, it kind of marries the personal relationship you feel towards somebody with that business responsibility.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's very well said. You know, I think of always like Downton Abbey, and I always like try to pull. Have either of you watched it?
Oh yeah.
Okay, great. Margaret's like, no.
I have not, but I know I need to. People keep telling me I should.
It's a wonderful story, but the only reason I bring it up is because hospitality, Jesse, like you said, is so well represented at different levels.
Yeah.
You have people who are sold out to it. You have people who are kind of in the middle. You have people who are totally against it, and you have the beneficiaries of it. Either way, they show this really broad scope of what taking care of others can really look like. And I've definitely pulled a few ideas from that. Just inside of, we've made serving others, I think, to be a problem in some way. And I think we don't want to think of ourselves as servants or slaves. And I have no problem seeing myself as someone else's servant, as long as I'm respected for the work that I do give. And that's the thing, is like, if respect is a big deal for me. If you don't respect what I'm giving you, I don't need to work with you. And Gary has always respected me from day one, which is why it's so simple to work with him. Anytime he asks me a question that's off my time, anytime he asks me a question on a weekend, he always acknowledges it. He apologizes for it, and he never does it again. It's so simple. The respect is mutual, and it's immediate.
So did you meet him at Landmark? Is that where you met him?
I did. I mean, I met him like in passing. He and I never formally introduced, but that's the only time I've ever seen him, believe it or not.
So I love context. I don't know what you guys are talking about.
It's because I was looking at your Facebook page and and so I love that you worked at Apple, because we're big Apple fans, just some companies that I recognize, and Landmark being one of them. And so you mentioned that you had met Gary at a similar place.
That was the training and development company I worked for.
Oh, you worked at Landmark. I see. Okay, I didn't know it was Landmark specifically. Okay.
Sometimes go for it.
Was your job then? Did this begin with Gary and with being a assistant for hire? Did that begin with Landmark?
Nope.
No. Okay.
No, I left Landmark a couple different times. I worked several different jobs in between that, and then I landed a job as an EA for a CEO of a tech firm out here in Orange County.
Okay.
And the best way I can describe it is, it was a firm that was responsible for anything technology for people with way too much money.
Okay.
So we had a lady in Los Angeles who had an apartment in the Century Towers, which I think ran, as she was getting it remodeled, and I think she bought it for like $50 million. She rented the condo below it, and that went for $2 million a year renting, because she was getting the top one remodeled.
Wow.
Those are the kind of clients we worked with.
Gotcha.
Too much money, just like whatever they wanted. We put speakers in the wall that were in the wall. You couldn't even tell they were there. They were just in the wall. They were in the drywall. And it looked like drywall. And then all of a sudden you just have sound pop out. We put in heated floors that would illuminate, and we'd do custom coding. We had network. It was crazy.
Wow.
Okay.
So I got there, and I realized after that job, it was a startup with these two young guys, that I didn't, as much as I could, I didn't want to take orders from people. I knew that was who I was, and I didn't know how to translate it. Reached out to a few friends. They turned me on to Gina Kottner, who's the CEO of Athena. And I started slowly, and Gary was my second ever client. And he's now my longest standing one. He and I have just from day one.
And how many people do you assist right now?
Currently, I have 2. Because I have one. His name's Mark Cooper. He's out of Portland. He originally, I was his EA, and now I'm his VP of operations.
And what kind of business is that?
So it's a consulting practice. So he's a coach consultant, used to be part of a dental conglomerate. Okay. And he runs his own coaching practice. So I'm responsible for all the systems, the websites, the money, how it all works, all the integration. So that kind of thing.
That seems like a good time to talk processes and systems for a second.
Absolutely. As long as we can keep it lively, that can be super boring.
I know, right? Well, as the executive in the room, I'll make sure to keep it lively because this would bore me to tears normally. But
right.
No, you mentioned when you talked about that mistake with Gary, how basically it was a lack of process, right?
That's right.
In onboarding this new client.
That's right.
What other processes and systems do you rely on to do your job effectively?
In terms of like actual like programs or like systems that I have for myself, like habits? Because I think there's habits that I have and then the like systems that I use inside of a computer program.
Okay, so think of both and then give us top like 3 or 5. You know what I mean? Because
I would say one of my top ones, I still, after all my tech guru crap, I still write crap down. I have a little thing. I do it every day. I split it up into my practice, Mark's, and Gary's. And I put notes on it each day of items that I need to remember. I write it down. I take it with me. Sometimes I take pictures if it's important. But I'll flip through it. There's just notes from months of things. So that's probably one of my biggest things that I've held on to is how important it is to tactily write stuff down. You don't need to write everything. I still do 90% of my stuff on the computer. But the 10% that's on this, hugely important to me.
That's interesting because I have, like Margaret just bought me a new notebook that I asked for. And I do that because I want the important stuff that I don't want to forget ever. It goes in there. And those are, so I have a program that keeps all my clients' information and all the notes and everything. But it's out of sight, out of mind for me versus a note. I can always open a notepad. And then these people will always be on my mind.
That's right. And I keep my notepad right to the left of my desk. It's got a spot. I can literally just turn my chair. Boop. What do you want to know, Gary? Hey, Jesse, we got this. Okay, cool. Done. And there's a movement attached to it rather than a mouse click or a keyboard function, which, science has proved is just not as effective in retaining information. It has its place, but from just a practical, like a systemic standpoint, is if you write something down with your hand, you're more likely to remember it and have it actually go into your memory banks. So,
that's fun.
That's one system that I use all the time. Second system is calendar is king, or habit. You don't get to not do what's on the calendar. Period. If you don't want it on the calendar, take it off. But if it's on, you do it. No exceptions.
Yeah, the company, so Keller Williams is a real estate firm that we're associated with, and one of their sayings is, if it's not on the calendar, it doesn't exist.
That's right.
Right.
Yes.
Which is echoing what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. This is the same, and that's partially what the whole mistake with Gary was. He told me in the very beginning, he's like, I don't care if you mess up on emails. I don't care if you mess up on these things. My calendar is my God. And if it's on the calendar, I do it. So if I mess up his calendar, it messes up his life. And I had no qualms with the ultimatum he gave me because I get why it's so important to him. And it made me better at my job for that specific reason.
Yeah.
I will go on to a program that has changed my life for you Mac users. I use Spark Email Client. It has transformed my workflow completely.
Why?
Well, I hate Mac Mail because it doesn't integrate well. And it also doesn't allow for push notifications. You have to wait 15 minutes before you get Google notifications. Spark, instant. It's free across all Mac devices. It has an application for Apple Watch, iPhone, iPad, Mac, iMac, everything. It can color code. I manage 6 email accounts. I can color code each of them. I can snooze email. It basically gives you all Gmail's functions into an email client. Plus,
Very
it
cool.
integrates your calendar. It simplifies every aspect of my job.
Are you an inbox zero type person?
Yes. At the end of each day or within an hour, I'm zeroing it out at the hour. If it's not zeroed, it's snoozed somewhere else. It's archived. It is in folder systems. I honor that email almost even more so than my calendar.
Awesome. That's cool.
I'm not even so much inbox zero. I'm new email zero. I don't mind if a handful of emails are in there because sometimes there's some ongoing tasks. And that's the thing. If it's in my email, it means it's not complete. But I don't mind things that aren't complete because I get that there's time factors that involve with it. But,
Totally
you know,
how I operate too.
I hate notifications on anything.
Since the calendar is important, how do you manage calendars? What are you using for that?
Right now I love G Suite. I am a heavy G Suite user only because of how universal it can be. I've worked with people with Outlook. I've worked with Mac Mail and iCloud. I can't stand any of them in comparison to G Suite. They don't integrate well in my experience. And both my clients now both use just Gmail. So I will pull up 2 different windows for both of them and have both their calendars native on some screens because I have 2 big 27-inch monitors here. And then I have a laptop if I need the additional screen. But I just have them all up and I'm looking at, finance, QuickBooks, and I'm looking at their calendars. People are asked for an event date. I'll look through, I'll flip through it all and it's all one big display for me. That, by the way, that would be the 4th or 3rd, whatever. Having a second monitor increased my productivity by 40%.
You measured it or you're estimating?
I halved my time. The time that it took me to do things went in half to about 40%. So I'm guesstimating. I didn't actually measure it, but the amount of time it took me to do things dropped.
I'm guessing. I'm just gonna go on. I'm gonna go out on a limb here. I'm guessing you do certain activities on one monitor and certain activities on the other monitor.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One monitor is like my calendar monitor, and one monitor is my working monitor. That's the one that's moving a lot. That's the one that's my main iMac, and then my secondary is for notes or for static items that don't need a lot of moving. Or actually, that's the one I predominantly have my email inbox open. So it's always up and I always see if a new email comes in. I literally can just look over if I'm halfway across my living room. Oh, that's in the Gary's inbox. Okay, gotta go look at it. Or it's my Tim inbox. I can look at that later. I can color code and see it all from halfway across the room. And it just stays up. Gotcha. So yes, that was good.
When you think about what you're doing now and how you got there and then where you want to go, when you think about your current role in hospitality, do you see it going the way it's going now? Do you want to help many different people? Like, do you want to carve out your day in pieces and help many different people? Or what's the end game? What's the goal for you?
Well, when I started out, the goal was to get stable. I will say that. I had never known stability on my own steam before. So that was my main goal, and I've realized that. I think now my end game is I'd like to do more of this kind of, I've had a lot of experience in front of people. I have a 15 years training, speaking, acting. Not many people now have seen me in front of a room, but I'm excellent in front of a room. I'm just not sure how that expression needs to play out. I want to do more of my own content. That's partially why, Margaret, I've gotten into photography, because I know once I get good at it, I can do a lot of sustainability with it and have more time to myself to really look at what my message is. My mission statement started out with 3 main things being my practices, like peace, love, and awakening was kind of what I was all about several years ago. And my mission has changed to I've been seeing freedom has been coming up for me in terms of where I see my focus being, and like what I want to start talking to people about is what is the nature of freedom? What's the nature of my own freedom? What's the nature of freedom in this country? Especially because of a lot of the debates that are going on. I don't want to get into the politics of it, but just what's shown up for me in terms of like, whoa, this is really very visceral, is the nature of my own freedom and what that means. So I'm looking at restructuring and asking myself a question of I don't have a solid answer for you, to be honest. I do know I want to do more of my own stuff. I want to produce I have a lot of stuff. I've produced years of memes and writings that I've done. It's just mostly I haven't done much with it. Haven't known what I want to do with it. But I do know that I love serving people, so it was a really easy, like, I don't mind serving. If all I do is serve people, I think I'll be happy. But I do know that I have a mind. You hang around executives, you can't help but become one yourself.
Right. Yeah.
You get around that mind. You be around Gary. Gary's gonna kick your butt if you don't elevate. And I feel like that's what I've done in the last 2 years. Is who I was then and who I am now. People come after me in businesses and they're like asking for my advice. I'm like, whoa. I have an answer for them because I've experienced it, because I've worked with pretrial justice firms in Maryland. I've worked with these massive companies that I never would have been exposed to had I not been in this role. So, not entirely sure yet, but I know I want to do more of my own thing.
I think that's an underappreciated value of the role, is that if you focus, in being an assistant for somebody, an executive, and maybe you help many. Like, for people listening, and I know some of our, like, let's say you're listening and you're in Nebraska, right? Mm-hmm. And you don't have access to some coastal thinkers or some, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
If you're thinking you're a small town, one horse town, and how are you going to help other people? The reality is that in this digital age, you can help people from anywhere, right? And so then as you get in touch with these other people, I love opportunities. Like, if you want to get me to get passionate, then for me, it's like, give me a place where I can create opportunities for myself and for other people. And so I really think part of the dialogue we're trying to change is people, again, going away from that just an admin type thinking to I'm an admin type thinking, right? And focusing on doing a great job, like you said, having integrity of responses, right? And then opportunities come from that. Like Tyler. Tyler is Gary Vaynerchuk's assistant, and he had the option to open up their London office or work for Gary, and he chose to work for Gary, right? Because that's an opportunity. Yes. And he doesn't know what's going to come out of it. That's kind of the draw for me, right? Is I like the unknown. I like the hustle and not knowing where it's leading me necessarily.
I think yes, you're right. So many admin or typical admin personalities, if they've never been trained to look for the opportunity, they won't. And so a lot of people don't know that when you work with someone, they don't invite, like, I would invite myself into meetings with you because I wanted to learn how he thought and then also get exposure to all these other people. And so I think, that's the part of the role that I love talking about the most, because I'm like, you guys don't even know it's ownership thinking. So it's not just I am an admin, but I am an owner. I consider myself, like, I don't have to have a piece of the business financially to actually be an owner, because when you think with ownership thinking, you become it.
That's
and
right.
I think that's the part that's so cool, that's what Simon Sinek talks about when he worked with Monique. That executive is the one that's closest to the whatever he called himself. And you're chosen to do that because you could be him. You could be that person or her. You could be whoever that owner is. So I think that's what's missing from a lot of people's mentality, is they're just kind of comfortable sitting back and saying, well, I'll just take notes, or I'll just go file something. I'm like, no, go file and then go start your own freaking podcast. Like, go do something. Don't just sit back and just
in the world.
Yeah.
Well, I think one of my proudest moments, I will say, and in that same, one of my former clients was the CEO of PJI, it's the Pretrial Justice Institute in Maryland. And it was the most incredible experience when I got to set up a meeting with her and Bernie Sanders. I'm corresponding with the Sanders. It was just like, you felt important, even though you weren't the person doing it. You knew that you were this piece that without you, it didn't happen. And I like that. I think that's the piece, is because it's hard to quantify what we do, we think that what we do is not a lot. And that's what I'm working to combat in this role, is like, look, do not undersell, even for a second, what you're removing for people, because it's highly valuable whether or not they're aware of it. And that's where we have to be incredibly mindful of who we are and what we're removing and what we're actually responsible for.
Well, it has to be neat to work with someone like Gary, right? And then see his rise, right? To see the wake come from his book and from everything that he's saying. Like, I think that'd be an exciting thing to be a part of. And that's what I think that's what people want to be. I think people want to be excited about working, where they work and what they do.
They do.
But it takes, and I love what you said, the integrity of response. It takes them doing 100% on every little thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
And caring about it.
Well, and I also like to bring teamwork into it, because it is a team. It's a 2-person team, and you guys are a 2-person team. But there's something really wonderful about teams, and I learned it when I played football. It was my senior year in high school, and our defense was just, we were nasty good. And they called themselves the dark side, and they did something no other team had ever seen. At the end of each practice, they'd go and lay on their bellies in a circle, and they'd talk about what they did in practice. I've never seen it like this before in my life. I was blown away by it. But they were so committed to the integrity of what they did in practice. Between game 2 and game 9, no team scored more than a single touchdown on us the entire season. In most cases, they wouldn't score on us at all. That's how good those guys were.
Wow.
And they were just so committed to the glue. And I can, like the same with you and Jesse and Gary and I, there's just the glue. And we want that. And some people just don't get that the glue requires you knowing your role really, really, really well.
Yeah.
And that's what was characteristic of that team, is that 9 of them were seniors.
Mm-hmm.
They all knew their position, and no one fought each other for the position. That's the thing, is I think executives, and tell me if I'm wrong here, Jesse, you don't trust a lot of people with much.
No.
Not at all. Why? And you're in the role you're in because you're exceptional at whatever you've done to create what you've created. And that's a real close to home experience. And so I think as an executive and an admin, whatever role you're in, if I'm Margaret, if I'm me and Gary, you have to get how important that is. And if you come at it with that importance, I think the hospitality comes in and the glue starts to show up, because in Jesse's mind, oh, wow, he may not get it right, but he gives a shit. Mm-hmm. And I can work with someone like that. I give a shit. I will not be perfect, but you will better believe at the end of the day, you know I care if I mess up. Not that I never will. And that's the shift. Right. We hate messing up, but how Jesse handles you messing up and how you handle messing up.
I think he cares more about how I feel when I mess up than what actually happens.
And that, I believe, and it's the same nature. And that's the thing, is that's the greatest relationship ever. If you're in a relationship and your husband cares more about what you do and then you care about what he does, if you're taking care of each other, it works. It's when we devolve to taking care of ourselves that we lose sight of why we are in that role in the first place, which was not to take care of ourselves, it's to take care of somebody else.
I think as I'm trying to think about what you're saying, and I'm trying to think of an analogy for it, I think it's a little bit like learning how to ride a bike.
You're gonna say worse.
And I want to say that I want my admin, I want them to be extremely proactive. And then I want that more important than anything. And then I want responsibility to come. I want there to be this balance, moving from proactivity to responsibility.
Yes.
So that, you can have training wheels for a while. Like, I'm going to give you training wheels because you don't understand the responsibility of everything. But I want you to get on the bike, and I want you to start to pedal, and I want you to be proactive. And then as you develop in your skill, we take the training wheels off, and now you're proactive, moving towards responsibility.
Yes.
And then at the end of that, then you're perfect. That's where I want you.
It's exactly what Gary did. First 3 months, he gave me 2 jobs. And he wouldn't give me anything else. He's the only person who's ever done that, by the way. Some people try to give you too much or too little. You're actually one of the only people, Jesse, who put it that way. But it's exactly what he did, and it's exactly why he works. Because in that 3 months, I got excellent at those 2 jobs. And then he's like, all right, Tim, I gave you those 2 jobs. We'll add some more. And he did. And now it's like he lets me determine whether or not he should go on a podcast. He's like, here's some podcasts. Research them. Tell me what you think. If it's good, schedule it. Like, I don't even talk to him. I'll go research it. Maybe. Okay, cool. Yeah, it's in his message. Okay, good. I'll do that. Where that was not a possibility in the beginning. So I think it's a really beautiful thing to be able to say that in that way, Jesse, and to really give people, and give them an opportunity to get good at something, because that will just strengthen it as soon as they get good at the next thing. I'm good at a lot of things with Gary, and that makes me feel really good. But I can also tell you that I'm good, and I can tell you what I'm good at because of the way in which he introduced what he needed from me.
I have to ask you one follow-up question about something you said earlier about not like you don't like being told what to do.
Yes.
And I pinpointed that and I wrote it down because I'm the same way. And I've had a really hard time. I had a really, really hard time the first 3 years working here because I've never wanted to be an assistant, really. And really purely, I think, because of the title and because of what other people assumed about it. So when I let that go, I was like, I'm much better with it. Because I don't think of myself as the typical assistant title, whatever. But I don't like being told what to do, which made me think maybe I'm not good for this role. Maybe I'm not, like, I am a servant-hearted person, absolutely, and I love being a servant. And there's a part of me that will always be up for I will do that till I die. But I don't like being told what to do. And I don't know what that mix is. So you're the first person that's ever said that. I've never heard another person in that kind of role say that before. I think how you mix that with what you have to do. Yeah. Just as respect.
No, it's great. I think it's a fantastic question. And I think my answer for it is it comes down to respect for me. It's not so much that I don't want to be told what to do, because I looked at it, I'm like, I'm not telling you, I don't know what to do. Like, that's not me. What I am against, though, is doing things that I don't believe are right. And it comes down to respect. And in all of my years working for people, the leaders, the people I've worked up to, have asked me to compromise myself and then not clean it up with me. And I lose respect for them. And then when they tell me what to do, I'm like, not a chance. I don't respect you. So for me, it comes down to respect and less about being told what to do. I don't mind being told what to do by someone who I believe is doing something excellent. Gary tells me something to do, and I'm like, hell yeah, dude. And if he tells me something, what I want is the opportunity to push back. And I feel like when people are telling you what to do, there isn't freedom to combat that. And I grew up that way. I grew up with a Baptist dad who told me it was none of my business whether or not he argued in front of me, even though he was arguing in front of me. He's like, no, it's my, and it was just like, he was very, no, it's this way and not another. And I believe in a much more fluid experience, especially if you're dealing with free human beings. You have to, I tell people, look, you don't have to do the things I say, but if I'm going to pay you to do certain things, I expect those things to be done. Now, do you have to do them the way I want them to do? Only if the way you want to do them doesn't get the job done. Then you have to do what I tell you to, or I just won't pay you. I think we've gotten away from the consequence and just response from something versus how to deal with a personality. And I think the two are a little separate. There are personalities and people need the ability to go and say things. And then there's a job to do and there's money that I'm paying for you to do it. And that's what I had to separate for myself. And then I recognized I don't mind being told what to do from someone who I want to learn from.
Well, and do you think it's also too that it's evident, obviously, that you went and created your own consulting company? I mean, so yes, you're doing things that people want you to do, but you have asked.
I have my own say, and even with Gary and Mark, it's all remote. If I wanted to go and hang out with you guys in Seattle tomorrow, I could. I got my laptop. Like, that's the reality of my freedom now, but there's still things that I am required and expected to do of other people who are clients on a ongoing basis.
If you want to get away from the rains of Southern California,
come
on up to Seattle where it's bright and sunshine.
I'm like, you guys have sun. This is awesome. It's all cloudy and overcast, man.
Yeah, it's beautiful right now.
I know we got to wrap up soon, so I'm going to just trace it back to, I know you just touched on it, thinking that it wouldn't apply to this conversation, and you couldn't be more wrong. So you were going to be a missionary, or you were headed in the direction?
I was in Thailand for 15 years. And
for like what dogma?
Denomination? Oh, it was Northern Baptist. It was at a BBC. So we went to plant churches. We did build one, but then right about 15, 16, my dad left the mission. Said he didn't know if he believed in God anymore. Didn't know if he loved my mom anymore. So that was my first real fundamental shift in my own dogma of what I believed. It was very, very fundamentalist up until that point.
And what would you describe your belief system now?
Simply, it's omniist is the closest thing that I've come to find and I find God and truth in just about anything and anywhere I look. In terms of, like, if I'm really looking for the presence of God or the experience of a connection with another human being, that is God. If I'm in nature, like, I look for that. And I try not to limit or think that one view is right. I don't believe that. That's for sure.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. It's part of the conversation that we have.
Mm-hmm.
That's good.
Because I was raised by a fundamentalist family as well.
You guys have a lot of similarities.
So.
That's good.
Yeah. And I was bitter at the fundamentalist part of me for a long time. I've learned now to really accept that and integrate that into my life in a way that I feel is empowering and just communicate with others. And
well, with the belief system that you have to. Right?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Yeah, I work with Christians and non-Christians alike because I don't mind working from a biblical stance for people who want that. Because I have no problem marrying my beliefs with a lot of scriptural references that I can back up so that they can support the views with integrity for themselves. I like that too.
All right, Tim, we appreciate it very much.
God, Jesse,
Thanks so much. Awesome. We didn't even get to go into all of your 7 jobs that I wrote down you have.
No, right.
Is it fair just to clarify, are you assistant, consultant, coach, photographer, graphic designer, and counselor?
I wouldn't say counselor, only because I am a coach and I'm a consultant. I am an ordained minister also. I do weddings, so you can put that on there officially. Yeah, I think that'll work.
Okay.
I think it'll work. All right, guys.
And MMA fighter stand-in.
There we go. Also. There we go. This is how I look. Hey, I look mean, I like it.
All right, thanks,
guys,
Tim.
Thank
you so much. Have a good rest of your day, all right?
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
I want to ride my bicycle.
Do you know that song? Oh gosh, I'm not gonna remember the name of it now. But my friend Jen Grawl sing it all the time.
It's so much fun.
My bicycle
What's a great story is when you go, oh wait, what? Who was it?
That's how I process. I'll have to look it up.
What did you think of Tim?
I told you after that I think that Tim is the male version of me, the closest I've ever seen to like someone who thinks like me, talks like me.
I can tell it's because of the shaved head and the big full beard.
Absolutely, we look very similar.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all, but no.
It looks like he owns a small monkey that might play a drum.
Oh my god. No, I loved how he described his roles and how he talked about how he thinks. I mean, it was a mix of like his personal life and professional life and crazy similarities between you and him and your experiences in life with divorce and things like that. And then like him talking about removing noise from people's life. I resonate with that so much. And then not being like, doesn't like to be told what to do. And integrity. He and I really, we talked about email, and it was so basic and silly. But when you email with someone and you're setting up something like that with a speaker for an event, when you are working with someone on the other end who gets it and responds, and you can trust that they're going to respond, the whole process of booking Gary John Bishop with him was seamless because we each did our part. And he knew that I was going to reply within 10 to 15 minutes. And because of that, he could then have an ease of scheduling on his side with Gary, which is super important. So I did whatever I could to make it easy on him. And so that, like, I look for that in other professionals in my position because I know we're going to get stuff done. And it's so awesome. Like, it's such a good feeling. So I loved how he talked about integrity of response and in understanding the presence. Like, that presence is so important. I loved it. I thought it was super interesting. I love that he has 6 different jobs, and I loved his systems and process suggestions because I have not looked into the Spark email client. I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, it's to be fair to our listeners, you should know that we started talking to him without recording.
Yeah.
So that there was like 5 minutes there.
Thankfully, Jesse, the OG.
As the original admin, I noticed that we weren't recording and we stopped it.
Oh, God.
Which is too bad because there's a few things in that 5-minute window that were interesting. Yeah. And, we started talking to Tim because of his relationship with Gary John Bishop. And I really kind of was curious about that model. Mm-hmm. Essentially, this virtual assistant model and how that worked, especially for someone like Gary John Bishop. And that's what I was curious about. That's what I wanted to learn about.
Mm-hmm. And it was been pretty evident to me that in order to make that successful, you have to be someone like Tim who can gauge presence, who can gauge kind of what Gary needed. And that's the only way it's going to work. Otherwise, you're going to have mediocre service. You have to have someone who's really in tune with people, who's curious about how people think, in order to make that successful.
I want to clear something up, though, because I was thinking about this when you mentioned it, Tim. It's not that you don't like being told what to do. Not carte blanche. That's not the issue. Do you think?
I do.
Come on. I tell you what to do. I tell you things I need done all the time. And you're telling me that bothers you 100% of the time?
So this is what I'm still struggling with. It's been a struggle for
it's only going to take 6.5 more years. And then
I am...
then my assistant will do what I ask her to do.
So I've had to, like... This is a really big... This could be a whole podcast in and of itself. I feel like I've had to trick my brain a little bit. I am an owner. I have ownership thinking. I am a leader. I do not want to be told what to do. And when you try to tell me what to do, it will, like Tim said, turns me 100% away from you. And I understand what he means about the respect thing. I obviously have a massive amount of respect for you, and you do for me, which is what makes it okay. Yeah. But yeah, the only way this works is because you're giving me the opportunity to be a leader and an owner in your company. If you weren't giving me these opportunities, which we've talked about before, I couldn't still be here, because ultimately I think that's what I'm supposed to do. I think I have a little bit more direction than Tim.
But I'm going back to the original. I mean, I ask you, I don't say, hey, Margaret, do this.
Sure.
I ask you if you can do it, right?
Yeah.
Is there a differentiation there? Like, I'm trying to figure out.
The way you say it, of course, that makes a difference. You do it in a night, like he was talking about, you do it in a respectful way. You don't say, Margaret, go do this. There's no respect in that, right? The way you ask it is, yes, that's the key. If you hadn't been doing that from the beginning, we wouldn't have been able to work together. Because just like Tim, like, this is a respectful relationship. And so that's why it works. Yeah. I still don't like to be told what to do, though. Ultimately, right? Like, I'm choosing to work for you. I'm choosing to do this. I have control over everything in my life, right? Like, I choose where I want to live. I choose who I live with. I choose all of that. And I mean, I'm a very independent, very stubborn, independent woman. I am.
I understand that, but it doesn't make you less so just because...
No, it doesn't make me less free or less independent. But
or what needs to be done.
Yeah, if we didn't have that kind of team mentality, I couldn't do it. I prefer to tell myself what to do. I do. I am that.
How do I communicate then what I need done?
Well, just as you have been doing.
No, but you're telling me 100% of the time you don't like it.
I'm telling you that I have adapted to be able to do it. I'm like what did Enme call me? She called me like a jellyfish. I'm like constantly morphing. And so the reason our partnership works so well, and which I think we talk about a lot on this podcast, is because of the mutual respect we have for each other. I know you don't just see me as an assistant.
I think it also had something to do with the job description, where I said, I need someone to help me do all these things.
Sure. You hired me to do that.
And then you do those things.
Sure. Just like Tim said.
Which requires communication on my part to go, hey, I need these things done.
I applied for a job.
Sometimes talking to you is like a Chinese finger trap.
A Chinese finger trap?
What like, okay, you know those
yes, I can
finger traps that you put your one finger in on each side?
I'm imagining.
And then you can't pull it apart.
Like that, yes.
It like traps your fingers. You can't pull them apart. Unless you scrunch them up again and then it comes out. And so talking to you is like a Chinese finger trap. This conversation is like that because I'm like, hey, I need an assistant. And you're like, hey, I want a job. And so we go together and we meet together and now we're stuck. And you're like, don't tell me what to do. And I'm like, I pay you money so I can tell you what to do. If you don't want to be told what to do, I don't have to pay you money anymore. You know, like, and you're like, that's not how this works. It's confusing. Yep, that's all you say.
That's exactly what Tim talked about there at the end.
I'm not talking to Tim. I'm talking to you now.
You're
telling me 100% of the time it bothers you.
I'm telling you that it's not in my natural state of being to like being told what to do.
You mean to be hospitable to your boss?
It's in my nature to absolutely serve people that I respect and love. And that is why.
As long as they don't tell you what to do.
I'm still here. Oh my God. I'm going to have to write this out for you. I can already tell this is going to be a later conversation. We should probably just keep mics on us all day long.
I have work to do. I have listings to sell. No, there's a lot of commonality.
We went all over the place in that podcast. Suicide, depression, divorce.
I know, right? And then, by the way, everybody, because this is hilarious, is he mentioned suicide. That's when I realized we weren't recording.
Yeah, you were like,
he's like, I came from a dark place. I was suicidal. I was like, oh, man, we're not recording. Hold that thought. Okay, hold on. And then to go right back to, hey, Tim, what's going on? What do you think? And he's like...
It was a hard transition.
It was really hard.
Yeah, I'm so thankful that you caught that, though. I'm going to have to put a Post-it on my desk.
Yes. No, but I didn't tell you to hit record. That doesn't work. So it's better that we didn't record the first 5 minutes because forgive me if I tell you what to do.
Oh, my God. I think I'm picturing the title of this podcast. Yeah, no, it was like a movie. I feel like we're just in a movie. We went the high, the low, the peak, the...
Sounds like you're on a boat. I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, I've got... Margaret is so phased right now. A
range of emotions.
She can't even talk.
Well, I was running like 5 hours sleep, too.
I know, but I really affected you. Oh, this is going to be a thing now, isn't it? Oh,
no,
geez.
I'm good if you're good. Let's just move. Let's move right along.
Why don't you want to talk about it, Margaret?
It's not that I don't. I just have a feeling we're going to keep going in circles till I get more rest and I'm able to clarify.
Or until you cry. And
Cry it
then
out.
I feel bad.
Oh my God, no.
And then we have lunch someday in the future.
Have lunch.
We agree to let bygones be bygones and move on.
What did you think overall about this interview with Tim?
I just want everyone to understand that this is what it's like with Margaret. She doesn't want to talk about it. She doesn't. You can't tell her to talk about it.
We can talk about it right now.
Can't tell you to talk about it.
I feel like we've spent a lot of time on it already. I don't want to bore our listeners, although I'm sure they're not bored at all. They're probably like on pins and needles right now. Okay, let's dig into it. I think it goes back to when I was 5.
Oh,
just kidding. No, I think compared to all of my brothers, Ben's probably, I don't know. They're all kind of similar in some ways. We're all pretty mellow, but Ben does not like being told what to do either. And I don't know. I think it stems from my mom. It's a very stubborn, fierce, independent female. And I like to lead myself and lead people. And I think the part that spoke to me about what Tim said was feeling like for the longest time, people didn't trust his intuition. I think he was talking about that in regards to his marriage. And I felt like that a long time until I got here when we in first couple years really delved. I talked a lot about my intuition and what I felt and what I sensed I think you are a very intuitive person. And I think in the beginning, you didn't trust me because that's normal not to trust people for the first couple of years. You have to build up that trust and build up autonomy, right? The ability to have autonomy from trust. And
well, it's as if you're learning how to ride a bike. And
oh my God.
You start with proactivity.
Tim loved that.
And then I take off the training wheels.
Yeah, Tim really liked that
towards
example.
Responsibility. I think that's what you're asking. You're trying to say. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, but I've learned that I'm learning that my intuition is really strong. I'm smart. I'm talented. These are my affirmations. I actually know what the hell I'm doing, and I need to start believing it just as much as other people believe it about me. So that's where I'm in, and that's where I think for the longest time I've just had positions and worked with people who told me what to do because they didn't think I had a thought. Drop the mic. Boom.
I was gonna call you. I was gonna make such a bad joke right there.
Oh no.
I couldn't remember.
Are you about to
name.
drop some music on yourself since you don't even have the ability to drop?
I was gonna go. Okay, Katy Perry. We hear you roar. Okay. Congratulations. Good for you.
Hell yeah.
Like, I'm independent and I'm me. It can't hold me back.
Oh my God. I think we just heard somebody laugh outside the studio.
No, but my point in response to that is, of course, no one likes being told what to do.
I think some people do.
Well, by far and away, I think most people don't. Mm-hmm. And yet we all have to deal with it.
Sure.
We all have to live with it. And any job where someone pays you money, you're going to have to do, there's expectations. Mm-hmm. And one of the expectations is that you make my life easier. Mm-hmm. And sometimes I have to articulate those needs. Mm-hmm. Don't I?
Don't I?
Otherwise, this is all a sham. And you're just here doing whatever you want. And I'm along for the ride. Sometimes it feels like that. I'm like, oh, goodness, what kind of day is it? Okay, can I ask Margaret for her to do this thing for me?
Yeah. I mean, am I the best assistant? I don't know. I don't know that I am. That's why I told Tim I question it. I questioned that. And when I heard Monique Hellstrom speak last year at the Pacific Northwest Operations Retreat, my first thought in my head was, shoot, I don't know if I'm meant for this. That's literally the battle within me is, because of that, I've questioned whether or not I'm the best person for this role. And because of other things, like I didn't know if I was going to be able to perform. I didn't know if I was going to be someone who could work in this industry. I didn't know if I was going to catch business.
I know. 6.5 years later, do you still say, I never thought I'd work in real estate?
I do when I'm telling people about my story.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's maybe.
Well, that's my point, though, is that stories that you've told yourself don't really change.
Okay. Tell me more.
Well, I want them to change. I would hope that they would change. I would hope 6.5 years in, you know why you're here and why you're working in real estate, right? Mm-hmm. And how your mindset was 6.5 years ago has little bearing on who you are today. Mm-hmm. But you do it all the time.
Mm-hmm. I mean, well, I think the comparison helps me see my growth. It's reminding. I think I'm trying to remind myself of where I've come.
Okay, so let's stop there.
Okay.
Now, if you think about how far you've come in this time and where you're at now compared to where you thought you'd be or where you were, isn't it all worth it?
Yes.
And so even if you're moving into a phase in life where maybe it happens less often that people tell you what to do, but that situationally it's required to do what someone asks you to do. And as you move towards being more independent and being more of an executive and building something of your own, doesn't mean that you have to be one or the other, right? You're just on a path and you're at this degree of the journey. And you don't have to have absolutes. Like, I don't like it. I don't like people telling me what to do.
Sure.
And yet, it's a constant conversation.
Yeah. I'm trying to get your flow here.
So why is that? If you know that you're on a journey between where you were and where you want to be, where you want to go, do you begrudge any moment in between as long as it gets you to where you want to go?
I suppose, I mean, the goal would be to not begrudge anything that gets you from there to in between. And I don't know, it's a constant like juggling, I guess. You're constantly like, for the longest time, I didn't stand up for myself. So like, it's funny that you reference Katy Perry and it's just funny. Haha. And, I don't mind it because, I stand up for myself now. Like, so saying it, I know you're not mocking me. I know you totally support me. I don't know. Maybe I'm going to have to think about this.
Okay. Here's what I mean. Sometimes I feel like the poster child for white, cisgendered, Anglo men.
Okay. Yeah.
I am the face of everything, every oppressor, every.
Yeah. You think like that?
When when it comes to this conversation, it absolutely feels that way.
Oh, okay.
Because I don't think I ask you things in a way that belittles you or
100%
takes
agree.
power away from you or any of those. And I don't want to have to think about it. I want to, because I did hire you, and I do want you to do very specific things, and you doing those things in a timely and diligent way improves everything for everybody. And so I don't want to think about it. So you having resistance in your head about doing anything anyone asks you to do is challenging for me, and I don't think it's a response to me. And as we consider our audience, and I know how many people look up to you and how many people think the same way, I don't want them to feel this way. I don't want them to think that they have to resist or resent being told what to do, because that's absolutely necessary at certain times.
Oh, sure. And I would hope that people listening can, see the difference between what I'm talking about. I'm not talking. So when I'm talking about who I am and what makes me up, like the fact that I don't like being told what to do, I'm not talking about it in relation to you. I'm talking about myself, Margaret. So you're bringing it up in relation to yourself.
Do you think everyone thinks that, though?
No, I'm sure people are all over the place. Sure. No, I don't know how other people think. It's not my job to control how they think. And I don't really care anymore. I'm tired of watching what I say.
But I know, but you and I are talking.
And yeah.
You care what I think.
Well, sure. And I think
to a degree enough that we should have a conversation if we're not on the same page about it.
Oh, always. We have to.
Okay, so this is the question I'm asking you, is in relationship to the conversation we just had with Tim and hearing you say, I don't like it when people tell me what to do, knowing that you're in a role where
I get told what to
the person who tells you what to do more than anyone is me.
Yeah.
I have to look at that and go, hey, I'm sorry. Can I have a question over here in the corner?
Yeah, but you know me well enough to know that obviously if this was an issue, I wouldn't still be here. We would have talked about it, right? Like I'm not here 6.5 years in.
I'm not saying that you would be gone. It's more, again, I care and I listen to you.
Sure.
I listen to you, right? I just heard you say you don't like it when people tell you what to do. I have to then internalize that and go, I have to tell you what to do at times. And this is a conversation that we're having now.
Okay.
And I'm trying to understand you. And you're saying that wasn't in context. It wasn't
I wasn't thinking about
relationship.
I wasn't thinking
or
about
your current job.
No, I don't think about when I'm saying stuff like that. I'm thinking about just me in the moment. I'm not thinking about it in relation to anybody else.
I wouldn't know that.
Yeah.
I don't think I would know that.
I
don't know that the listeners know that.
Okay.
I don't know.
I think that you know me well enough, though, to know, how stubborn I am, how independent I am, how that's part of the way that I think you go, now you don't think about it, but that's why you do approach me the way that you do, because inherently, we've probably talked about this before, years ago, how I don't like being told what to do. And that's something you worked on was, you're very professional and kind and in the way that you approach people and how you never shout like, hey, go do this to me or Sarah or anybody. So that's never been an issue, has never been how you ask me to do anything. No. Yeah. No, this is just me talking about me, not in relation to my job right now or anything. It has been a struggle for me when I think about being a servant-hearted person, because that type of personality is what is needed in the assistant role. And there are people who thrive on that. There are people who say, it is my dream to be an assistant and personally assist people. That is not my dream. And so that's where I've had that internal struggle when I hear Monique Hellstrom talk about like just serving for I've wondered, am I in the wrong place in this idea of being an assistant or an admin? Because that's not where my heart, I don't want to just do that. I'm just voicing my internal war with myself. That's it. Because I have this super stubborn part of me that's just like, I don't want to be told what to do. I want to do it my way. I want to lead. I want to be at the head of the pack. That's just the entrepreneur in me. I think that has been buried for a long time. And I think it's from my mom's side of the family. I think my mom's family is, and my dad's parts of my dad's family, but my mom's primarily, with a couple of my aunts, like they could have had different lives if it were different times.
All right. Well, let me put it this way. I hear you. I understand you better. And I don't want to be the guy.
I appreciate that you're having social awareness. You always have that, though. That's what I like about you. Like, you are very aware when you talk about wearing the white, like you're the poster child for the white man.
White cisgendered male
oppressor. That's all I talked about when I was getting my degree in social work. So I like that you have that lens. It's part of the reason I like you. You have that awareness. And I've never felt like you put me in a weird position. That's, No,
it's just I want to be clear because you have autonomy to say what you want.
Yeah.
Like more so than
to push back, like Tim talked about. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's not always clear to me. And I don't know that it's always clear to our listeners. And they can tell us if when you speak like that, if you're talking about your current circumstances.
Oh, sure. I don't think I'm clear when I speak at all, which is why you're my translator.
No, but I mean, that's what I mean. So when you're talking to Tim and you're talking about you don't like being told what to do, like to me, that harkens back to when you didn't want to be called an assistant. Mm-hmm. And I was wanting to pull my hair out because I was like, I'm sorry. I don't treat you poorly. Mm-hmm. I don't treat you like an assistant or I'm subservient or anything. Mm-hmm. It seems like a response to me. It seems like a response to how I'm treating you. Mm-hmm. And it feels a little bit like I'm the guy after the abusive relationship. Like I'm the guy, right? And like I raise my hand and you wince in fear, but I'm not. God. You know what I mean? Like you're responding to me, but not to my actions. Yeah, it's more to your history.
Okay. Yeah.
And
maybe you're jumping.
Sometimes that's confusing. Yeah. It's hard for me to hear you talk about that stuff because.
Yeah, I think oftentimes too. I think you've gotten a lot better, but sometimes you jump to thinking it is about you. When it's not.
Yeah. You know how many times people have said, it's not all about you, Jesse. And I'm not saying that. I'm literally not saying, I am trying to understand.
Yeah.
Because when I do care about you and I care about our relationship and I want it to work well, and I'm always under a constant state of evaluation. Mm-hmm. And so then when I hear you say that, it kind of hits me funny and I have to go, I don't quite understand.
Yeah. No, well, I'm glad you asked further.
Yeah, it still clear as mud, but
perfect. Damn, I thought we got somewhere.
No, it did a little bit. We're far enough along.
Okay.
I'm just gonna.
You don't have to evaluate all night long now.
No, maybe a little bit. I'll just self-flagellate myself with a picture of every white cisgendered male oppressor in the last 500 years, and I'll.
Oh, perfect. God, this was an interesting day.
Oh, yeah?
I really liked it. It was quite the mix. I had an interview this morning. Then we had lunch.
Oh, thanks for saying that. This actually brings up another point I wanted to bring up.
Perfect. Okay.
You and I think people will benefit from hearing this. We did an interview today.
Yeah.
It's some random day, random time.
Don't know who it is.
And it's amazing how differently you and I see people.
I know.
And it's not.
That's the power of our partnership.
It's also clear as mud. Yeah. That's clear as mud.
Yeah.
Because you see somebody and you're like, I really like them. And I get in there and I'm like, what is she on? And vice versa, where I go, I want to give him a chance. And you're like, what? Like, this is a hole in our game.
I think we need to ask Enme about this because I do feel like it's the yin and the yang. Like, it's a good thing that because you want different people at the table, right, to see the different sides. And man, I agree. Are we on different opposite ends of the ball? Like the striped beach ball. You're like the three colors on the side.
Oh, you were so excited. You were like, I haven't seen you this excited about a prospect in years. And I'm like, just on the outside, I'm going, what? And this and that. Okay, all right. Curiosity. Put on my curiosity hat. Go in there.
You're good with the curiosity
hat. Exact same. No, I mean it just shows you how differently we see things.
That's so true.
And I know people think we get along. I mean, we get along.
We do.
But
we've learned how to.
We have very different. We don't always see eye to eye.
No, I don't. And I think that's the beauty of it too. And I think that's what makes a good partnership.
And the one thing that's frustrating, where we don't see eye to eye, I think, is recruiting.
Yeah. The process or the people?
The people.
The people.
But because the process is so much.
Thorough.
And you have to carry a lion's share of it. Like I was in there today and and I like the candidate just fine.
Yeah.
And I want to be respectful, and my skin is boiling. I like to sit in there for that length of time.
Mm-hmm. And he was even pretty quick too.
Yeah, he was super quick.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because we're busy.
Yeah, there's
and
100 different things
there's
you could be doing.
things I'd rather do than this, but this is important.
Yeah.
Recruiting is important.
Yeah. That's a good example of how we think differently. Yeah, it's like you look at a picture and like I see blue and pink and you see like I don't even know what green.
Has there been
a
time out of a recruiting session where like hell yeah, high five and they were great and amazing? I don't think there is.
Jessica?
We liked her. We both liked her, but were we? I guess that was probably the only time. That's good news.
That is good.
No, I mean our current buyer's agent. We were both excited about.
Yeah,
we moved forward very quickly.
Well, I can think of a couple other people in the past.
Okay,
3 years.
But let's go back. But you were as enthusiastic about Jessica?
Mm-hmm.
I was more so than you, a little bit.
I don't think so.
You're going to modify how you feel because Jessica listens to this.
No, Jessica. Jessica.
Oh, now you're speaking directly to Jessica?
I like Jessica very much.
Your Honor.
No, I'm
pandering the witness.
Pandering. Oh, my God. I don't think I have the memory to go back and decipher whether I was more excited or you were. I just remember the last 3 years. It's been painful. Like, you get I'm trying not to get, the part that I've gotten better at in recruiting is that I understand this is a people game and people are going to come and people are going to go. And in my little social worker heart, it used to be so hard for me to let go of people.
Nope.
So easy now. So in the interview process, the thing for me is the work it takes is the hardest thing for me to feel like I'm not on a hamster wheel, just churning through people. I want to find good candidates and I want to be excited about them. And, we've been excited about people when we've hired them on and then they haven't worked out and it's a bummer. So I don't know. It's, there
was a point not that long ago where I had to be like, do I want to do this again? Like, do I want to?
Sure.
And then I'm like, hey, if you want to own a team, this is what it takes.
Constant. Yeah. And once when you talk about the wheel of the sales that we get, once we get the wheel going, the momentum, I feel the same way about recruiting. Once we get it going, and then people seem to come and float towards us, and we don't have. But it's getting it going that I feel like we had to do again recently. That was really hard.
Well, I know that if we get the flywheel of momentum moving on the sales side, that recruiting follows.
Yeah.
Because we're busy.
Yeah.
And people know, and they see our listings, and they see that we're busy, and then they're like, "Hey, I want to work with someone that's busy."
Yeah.
They don't want to work with someone who's working on being busy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't expect this, did ya?
I don't think I even know what to expect at any time.
She says
anymore,
with a lilt.
Which I like it. I was telling the girls I went to Walla Walla this last weekend with some friends in the admin world. And I was saying, they were talking about the podcast and they were like, do you plan out your topic every week? And I was like, oh, no. Like maybe we plan out when we have a speaker because we need to think about their schedule. But otherwise, I was like, sometimes I don't know until like the moment we're going in. And they were like, really? And I said, yes. And I appreciate it now because it's really gotten me, like sharpened my skills and the ability to be able to just talk out a subject without knowing.
Oh, they would be horrified.
They would be like...
No, if they could see how I murder your schedule every week.
Oh, that just, yeah.
You know schedule. What? Margaret plays a shell game with my calendar. I swear to God.
A shell game? Yeah. What does that mean?
You move around your 411 time with me every week. I don't even know what you're doing at this point. Like, you move away. I get an alert. Margaret, move 411 to this time. And then I'm like, and then later that day, Margaret moved it to this time. And then you're like, team meeting, move to this time. And I'm like, what the? And then so just to get you back, I go, podcast move to this time.
That's awesome.
Right?
Yes.
And I'm always moving towards business. I'm always like, if I have a listing, anything is going to result,
high priority.
I'm moving that direction.
Yeah.
And then
everything else shifts around.
And you've been good at rolling with the punches.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I no longer care when stuff happens. It'll happen. Yeah.
You kind of care.
I mean, a little bit.
You're like, I don't want to process this at 11 p.m. tonight.
Well,
so
yeah. I mean, I'm trying to be better about that.
If you could do this during working hours. I'm like, hey, can we push this till like 4:30? And you're like, no.
I'm trying to be better about my schedule.
So I committed to doing this now.
Doing the intro,
and pushing off a sales activity for your benefit.
Yes, that was nice of you.
Because I care about you. And I want to have the kind of relationship where I can tell you what to do and it won't come up in a future episode. That's all I'm asking for.
Well, this has been an enlightening conversation. It's been good.
Well, that was real talk. Real talk.
Maybe a drop will hit. Maybe it'll be a different drop. Who knows?
Oh, yeah. Where's the laptop for drops? You were supposed to...
Well, it's actually in my office, but I haven't had a chance to test it. And I don't like to do anything with you that I haven't tested because I like it to work the first time.
And I have to find some drops to give you up in there.
You have drops?
Oh, we need to take little audio bits from previous episodes. And drop
and alter them.
And in the right...
Oh, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that.
Where you say something like
I just have
you say something totally out of context.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect.
And then people are like, "What?" But the people that are listening are like, "Oh,
I get it.
That's from episode 13."
I was thinking about hiring my friend Marika just to do a couple random real talk, sing it out, But maybe we don't even need that. We just use our own.
You don't like it when I do it?
No, I think it's great when you do it. Oh my God. Yeah, the laptop hopefully will be coming next week.
Oh, we need an ASMR episode pretty soon, huh?
We haven't done that in probably a month, actually.
Well, after doing 3 in a row, I'm modifying my voice organically.
That's actually kind of brilliant.
How's it going, Margaret? All right, I have things to do. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, guys.
We worked it out.
Mom
and Dad will be okay.
We worked it out right here at the table on the mics with you.
If anyone made any sense of that conversation, please email me at jesse@pickettstreet.com.
Oh my God. And if I made sense to you, email me at info@pickettstreet.com.
I want validation.
Actually, no joke, you guys. Please share this episode. I know this this conversation with Tim and then with Jesse afterwards will be super applicable to a lot of different partnerships. So if you haven't already reviewed us on iTunes, I'm going to be pushing out, we need more reviews, you guys. We need your recommendations and ratings to help us get future guests. So please share with other people in business.
And maybe a guest idea. I feel like we're to the point where we've got some validity. We have some guests we can show. Susan Scott, Gary John Bishop.
Yeah.
Monique Hellstrom.
Yeah.
And who do you have next for us? In fact, I was also going to issue a small challenge to somebody.
You were going to, okay.
I think, and no one take him, no one and you don't do this either. Don't you go around and
I won't go, okay.
So we'll just mention it, and we'll see if he hears it or not.
Ooh, okay.
I think David Bruckheimer should do a riff intro.
On his guitar?
Yeah.
Oh,
for Finally Clicked.
Word.
Like a guitar interpretation of our podcast.
You know who would be so jealous of that?
Or to close it out, intro or close.
Have you listened to his stuff? He's good.
Yeah, I know. Why do you think Dan, I would recommend someone bad do it?
My roommate Dan would be really
on a ukulele.
No, I'm just saying he's going to be jealous. That's all. I'm not saying we need to use him because I don't think he's listened to our episodes.
I'm just saying.
Okay, let's see if David Bruckheimer hears that because he's a pretty consistent listener. Well, I'm going to bite my tongue.
Test our listeners. Everybody, let it be organic.
Let it be organic, everyone.
Okay. No blind dating David Bruckheimer to our podcast. Okay. It's got to happen naturally. We want him to approach us at the bar and ask us what our sign is.
Oh my God, that would be amazing. He's so awesome. That would be such a cool intro. That's a great idea.
Or outro. Or just a drop.
I got another suggestion by the way, for a sponsor for whiskey from Spokane. Dry Fly
Distilling.
Dry Fly.
They don't do. It's not just whiskey, is it? I think they do vodka and.
Oh, I don't know. Someone said they might be interested
in spirits. I think they do spirits. Hey, we're spiritual.
Spiritual.
We can do that.
Because for sponsorship, we're not looking for some massive amount of money, right? We're just looking for a bottle.
I would like it to be good. And I think Dry Fly is probably good.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
All right.
I think. Listen. I think we're the next best kept secret. So, and then as soon
I
as
do see this, this is like just the beginning of this podcast explosion.
Uh-huh. Yep.
Yeah.
All right. I'm going to go sell some houses.
Okay. Go do that. I'm going to go work on
Speaking of, if you know anyone that needs
real
estate assistance in the greater Seattle area,
let us know.
Thanks,
guys.
We'd be happy to help.